Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Director of the Faculty of Architecture of the University of Porto, I am delighted to welcome you to the 8th International Conference of the Sophia Journal, which is part of the thematic cycle Landscapes of Care. The conference, which takes place throughout today and tomorrow, includes roundtables for each panel, addressing various topics arising from submissions made to the Sophia Journal. The conference is led by the Center for Architecture and Urbanism of our school and coordinated in partnership with other institutions such as University College of Dublin, London South Bank University, Escola Superior de Artes e Design da Universidade do Minho, University of Copenhagen, and European Centre for Documentary Research, University of South Wales. I would like to thank all these institutions and the members of the conference organizing and programming committee. Hugh Campbell, Igia Troiani, João Leal, Mark Durden, Olivia Marques da Silva, Rick Munch Peterson, and Teresa Cunha Ferreira, who, under the direction of Pedro Leão Neto, whom I would especially like to thank, made this event possible. I would also like to thank the guest speakers, Maria Neto, Nuno Grande, Paulo Catrica, and Rita Castro Neves, all the members of the scientific committee, and the team responsible for the organizations and all the logistics associated with this event. I would also have to notice the exhibition, The Idea of Álvaro Siza by Mark Durden and João Leal, which is taking place at the same time. I would like to thank them both for the opportunity they have created by making available their photographic work on the buildings of the Carlos Ramos Pavilion and the Faculty of Architecture of the University of Porto, resulting in the publication of the first 3 volumes of the Skopje newspaper journal, The Idea of Álvaro Siza. Well, I wish you all have 2 great days of debate and of work, and I will finish by giving the floor to Pedro. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Teresa, for your kind words and welcome introduction to the conference, the international conference, and good morning to all. And I want to give my warm greetings to all of you, to all the people that are here, the authors that are presenting the theoretical papers and visual essays, the main organizers and moderators of the tables, the invited speakers, and of course my colleagues and some students, and that are here in person and online. And so thank you all for your interest and for participating in this event. As you know, these events are important because it's the possibility we have for debating and exploring issues of research and study that are of our interest. But they are also important for meeting new researchers and new colleagues that we didn't know, and for socializing. So we try to create some spaces and time where that could happen more easily. So of course we have the normal interval breaks with coffee and snacks, but we can all be together at lunchtime at the faculty's bar. And we have arranged later in the opening of the exhibition, The Idea of Álvaro Siza, in one of the buildings, the Pavilion Carlos Ramos, with the work of Mark Durden and João Leal, to have a port wine reception that was given by Newport Company and Vieira de Castro, which I thank for their support. And after that, we have also the official dinner of the conference in a restaurant that is 5 minutes walk from here. And then again, for those who have booked earlier, you have this reservation, but the restaurant is good, so there is still time for people that haven't booked to have a place at the restaurant, so we are all together. And we have also placed in the conference platform a website, not only the book of abstracts and the program, but also a list of suggestions that you can visit. So, because for many of you, it's the first time in this wonderful city, and also in this wonderful building of the School of Architecture that, as you all know, has been designed by our great master, Álvaro Siza. And so I hope you have a good time in these days that you are staying here. I'll start by presenting the main organizers of this conference, which will be also the moderators of the roundtables of each panel during the conference. Hugh Campbell, Professor of Architecture in the School of Architecture, Planning and Environment Policy at University College of London. Ijia Troiani, Professor of Architecture and Head of Division for Architecture at London South Bank University. João Leal, Artist and Full-Time Professor in the School of Media Arts and Design. Mark Durden, Writer, Artist and Professor of Photography at Newport, University of South Wales. Olivia Marques da Silva, and she couldn't be here today, but she's been represented by Luís Ribeiro, also from the Media Arts and Design School. And Ricky Monk Peterson, also professor at the University of Copenhagen, Landscape Architecture and Planning. And Teresa Ferreira, my colleague and integrated member of our research center of Architecture and Urbanism, and she is the founding member of the Portuguese Association for Urban Rehabilitation and Heritage Protection. So I would like to thank you all for having accepted this challenge and to make possible the open call and this conference and the upcoming Sophia Journal publication. Thank you. And I must also thank, and I won't be naming all the people that have been involved in the organization of this conference and in several works and that have made this possible, but from the Department of Communication in the Faculty of Architecture, from the Research Center of Architecture Urbanism, from the Administrative Services, from the Scopio team, especially the graphic design, infographics, and social media, and the conference organization team with two researchers from the research group of Architecture, Art and Image, and also belonging to the team of Sophia Journal. So I thank you all for all the work that you have been doing and the enthusiasm for making this conference possible. I think it would be interesting and important to give you a brief contextualization, an outline of this international conference and all the research and work that has been going along with it. So as you can see here from this image with the posters of the international conference on the surface, and this research and this passion began really in 2010 with the international conference, also focused on photography and architecture, the intersections between photography and architecture, and it was a conference that gave us force and enthusiasm, and it was a success, and it was the base to create and evolve, and instead of just publishing a book of abstracts and proceedings, we thought, why not we start thinking on a journal, an academic journal, and that could, of course, publish the theoretical articles and visual essays and other content. And so this evolved naturally, these international conferences and the research and the network of institutions and people around these teams to build this so this peer-reviewed journal, academic journal, but very focused on our themes of interest. Architecture, art and image is a bit a global umbrella, but we are really focused on photography, film, related with architecture. And so it's not only started to be published, and we created this peer-reviewed journal, but also the conference started to be called Sophia Journal International Conference. And Sophia Journal is now in an open journal system platform, which is very important because of the accessibility. All the content that is here is easily downloaded or consulted by this platform all around the world. But it's important to say that we believe the importance of the paper. We are passionate for the publications in paper, and we think this is very important to be in the libraries or in bookshops of universities, and for a lot of reasons, and we can be talking that later. And so we try to create synergies between the digital and the network and the paper support. And it's also important to say that we think not only architecture, but also image in a comprehensive and global way. That means architecture, we think architecture that is a practice and a discipline in a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary way of space of working and evolving, and that is very important, that architecture is able to integrate other disciplines and how they think about the city and architecture to give answers to that. And also architecture in different scales, like the public space, the buildings, and how they characterize the cities and how the cities characterize the territories. And I think that is clear with all the submissions and all the work that is being done. Also important to think about image also in a comprehensive way, like integrating photography, film, even physical models, drawing, of course, and other supports in the media. And most of all, to think image, and of course we have a passion, as you all can understand, and I think it's common for photography and film. But using photography and film for this interplay between describing, analyzing, and reflecting about city space, about architecture, about being able to build new constructs and new understandings about the space. So I think all that is very clear, and it's fascinating how different authors respond to this, and how you have different visual strategies and different ways of understanding architecture and reality. And I think all this is very rich and is visible through the publications and through the platform, and will certainly be here present in the conference roundtables and panels. And as you can see, it's we think that since 2010 we really want to create this network of institutions and researchers that have this passion in common, that we like to study, we like to produce field work around these themes. And this, well, of course, we have institutions and researchers that have been with us longer, like Marco Juliano from Liverpool School of Architecture, like Iñaki Berguera from University of Zaragoza in architecture. But we have been creating new connections, new collaborations with the University of Navarra, with ETSAP in Barcelona, and now with the University College of London, with London South Bank University, and with the University of Copenhagen and University of South Wales. And we think this network that is being reinforced is very important, and we are looking forward to it. So As I said, these events are important for meeting in person. Many of us have exchanged ideas and talked by online, but here we are in person, and it's a socializing opportunity, which is very important. And of course, the panels and the round tables discussing the themes we like. So I think this is one of the main forces for this network. And we have having some problems with the website because of security things, unfortunately, but the Book of Abstracts is online already, and as the program, and we have a rich program involving 4 panels with round tables. That's going to begin in a moment. And we are tomorrow having this open call of our third team of landscapes of care. And as I've already explained, we have the exhibition, we have the port wine reception, and we have the presentation and discussion around 4 publications, a book that focuses exactly on this intersection between photography and architecture with several field works. It has to do with a postdoctoral thesis. And also we'll be having the presentation of 2 publications of the collection, The Idea of Álvaro Siza, in Skopje newspaper journal. And they will be presented tomorrow with a panel. So I won't take more of your time, and I'll give the floor now for the moderators of the first panel, types, Hugh Campbell and Teresa Ferreira. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pedro, and thanks for bringing us all together. It's really great to be here, and what a wonderful room in which to spend the day. Myself and Teresa are going to be moderating this first session. There are 4 contributions. I think 3 of them are in person, and maybe one of them is online. I'm not sure. But anyway, they will happen. So we have the first 2 presentations, and then we have... Sorry, that's better, isn't it? We have the first 2 presentations, and then we have a break, and then we have another 2 presentations. We thought that we would wait and have questions and discussion at the end, but if there are, maybe at the end of each paper, if there's some very specific question about something about the paper, we might take it at that point. The theme, or within the overall theme of landscapes of care, which is the theme of the journal, thinking about the ways in which photography and film and lens-based media can, if you like, exercise care or can be part of an agenda of care in terms of particularly heritage landscapes and heritage, modern architectural heritage. The theme that we've given this first session is types. I guess we're thinking there about how, let's say, the recognition of or the development of a type within architecture can be part of a process of care. Like that in a way can be a first step towards assigning value and therefore towards, let's say, guaranteeing continuity. When it comes to certain parts of urban architecture, certain buildings that might be anonymous, certain buildings that might be somewhat contested in terms of their value, that creation of a type through the media of photography and film can be a first step, an important step. And in that vein, our first presenters today are from Aachen, and they're going to talk a bit about certain building types within Aachen. So I'm delighted. Birgit and Leonie, do you want to come up? I'll introduce as you're coming up. So Birgit Schillig-Hammers is Senior Lecturer at the Department of Art History at RWTH Aachen. And
here?
maybe here and here, is that okay?
Okay.
And she is, among other things, an associate of the DFG project, which is called Lens on Photography as a design tool in the invention of modern architecture. And then Leonie Bunte is working with Brigitte as a research and teaching associate at Aachen University, is also conducting her own research. I know has just come back from CCA where she's been working in the archives. So we're delighted to have Brigitte and Leonie with us, and we'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much. I think you present over there in the...
Do you want to go there, or do you want to sit here?
If you prefer to change the set, I don't know what you prefer. I mean, the thing is over there, right?
Clickers there. There's one there as well. If you prefer.
Okay. However you prefer.
Over there, okay.
Okay, does it work? Okay, thank you very much for inviting us to the whole committee. Our paper explores the concept of photography as a visual preservation method by taking the example of Aachen, a middle-sized West German city. Similar to numerous other major cities, Aachen is characterized by a certain kind of anonymous architecture which emerged in the cities of the former Bonn Republic in the 1970s and 80s. Buildings from this era currently confront the risk of demolition stemming from the lack of recognition, appreciation, and lack of maintenance and care. This is not only problematic regarding their underrated heritage value and the potential inclusion in the canon of architecture history, but also in terms of sustainability. These buildings have played a significant role in shaping the character of today's typical West German cityscapes, thus holding a crucial place in the identity of these urban and suburban areas. Therefore, it is necessary to impart their architectural qualities and importance as part of the urban culture to the authorities, academics, and the wider public. Does it work? No. There? Yeah. I'm sorry. No, okay, so this one, yeah? Okay. Our presentation will focus on the city of Aachen as a case study following a seminar we organized last summer at the Faculty of Architecture at Aachen University. It resulted in an exhibition that took place in the context of the Zukunftsbau pop-up campus entitled Safe Material, Save the Planet in Aachen, that was funded by the Federal Institute for Building, Urban Affairs and Spatial Development. The project, realized by master students in architecture, aimed to explore various buildings from the 1970s and 80s in Aachen and to develop critical approaches to preservation through photograph exploration. The seminar consisted of a theoretical part and a one-week photography workshop that allowed the students to enhance their photographic techniques. Aachen is an average West German city with a population of approximately 250,000, bordering Belgium and the Netherlands, close to Düsseldorf and Cologne. Historically, Aachen was a significant center during the Carolingian Empire that stands out as a noteworthy example in European urban planning history. During the Second World War, the city center and 62% of the residences were destroyed. Illustrations depict the extent of the destruction in the city center. Between 1960 and 1980, significant renewal and densification took place across all parts of the city. As recently as the 1970s, the city proposed a development plan for the main streets of the city center. This plan included making the area more car-friendly by reconfiguring the rings and radius. Starting point for the student project was the ongoing discussion around the Aachen bus station, designed by architects Siegfried Reitz and Willy Frings, and completed in 1973. Once a signature project of urban planning and modern traffic policy, it is now regarded as an eyesore in the midst of the city center. The public debate whether to rebuild or tear down the whole complex is massively heated up by the reporting in the local press, where the building is described as, I quote, ugly concrete block and Angstraum, meaning space of fear. On the other hand, it is indeed obvious that this massive architectural complex, which has 56,000 square meters above ground and 41,000 square meters underground, functions as an impressive landmark within the city center and still plays an important role regarding the public traffic.
So, previous attempts to characterize these kinds of buildings in West Germany and analyze their possible heritage value often focus on the 60s and 70s. Regarding the difference in the appearance of cityscapes in East and West Germany and the history of urban planning in both parts of Germany before 1989, it is reasonable to concentrate on the 1970s and 80s. Around 1970, urban planners dismissed the idea of a car-friendly city and the suburban mass housing, in German Großsiedlung, as the ideal solution for housing shortage. The rethinking was, amongst others, caused by the sociocultural changes in the late 60s. The architectural style emerging, especially in the 1970s and 80s, is still to be defined. Beside definitions of terms like postmodernism or late modernism by architectural historians like Charles Jenks, which can be taken as a first attempt to define the anonymous modern in Germany, the visual analysis through photography might contribute to the identification of its stylistic characteristics. To identify these buildings in the city of Aachen, the students strolled through the cityscape looking for this certain kind of buildings from the 70s and 80s, defined by materials like concrete or aluminum and a specific use of forms and colors. The chosen buildings were described as disregarded, but somehow intriguing in their appearance. Most of them were in neglected conditions and in need of renovation. The buildings chosen by the students can be classified by three categories. The ones that were unwanted, stated by the local press, like the bus station, you can see here. The ones in discussions to be toned down because of their inutility, like the former police headquarters. Then the ones simply unseen, like average housing estates, and municipal administration buildings. They all had in common that it was not much known about their building history, and they were widely considered as disruptive elements in the city landscape. Until now, neither a specific heritage value nor certain photographs of these buildings existed. Nevertheless, these buildings arouse a kind of familiar atmosphere of typical West German post-war cityscapes in their entirety. Their run-down facades reminding of bygone promise of modern living.
As you can see in these pictures we just showed you, the chosen objects were recorded and examined by the students from both documentary and aesthetic points of view. This process was preceded by intense studies of the fundamentals of architecture and urban photography as a visual method to document, evaluate, promote, or preserve architecture. Photographer Roman Besjak guided the participants with his expertise in photographing socialist modernism. In his work, he takes a closer look at the dismissed and politically charged urban architecture of the former Soviet Union. Next to projects like Ed Ruscha's Some Los Angeles Apartments or Learning from Las Vegas by Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown, which served as a starting point on the possibilities of exploring and explaining architecture by the means of photographic approaches, there were other references discussed, of which only a few can be named here. Richard Nicol is a well-known example of an activist who uses photography as a tool to fight for preservation. He was an architectural photographer and historic preservationist who worked in post-war Chicago from the 1950s to the 1970s, who attempted to save the neglected or diminishing buildings of the architect Louis Sullivan from demolition, pioneering a new form of activist preservation, photography. Swiss artists Peter Fischli and David Weiss photographed buildings from the 70s and 80s in the periphery of the Central European cities, especially in Switzerland, but focused on the harmonious coexistence of nature and architecture. In a collection of photographs titled Siedlungen, Agglomeration, which you can see here, Fischli and Weiss show some glimpses of a suburb that remains anonymous. And of course, Bernd and Helle Bicher similarly photographed a kind of anonymous architecture in Germany and consequently built a compilation of photographs. They started their work with the aim to document certain architectural types before they would be gone. Furthermore, they were interested in the formal correspondences within groups of water towers or furnaces, as well as in the technical aspects. The actual artwork wasn't photography, but the concept of a series of typologies in accordance with the concept art of the late 1960s. It was not the Becher's objective to save the industrial architecture from demolition in the first place, nor was it prior to them to evaluate architectonical style or create a better image. Their approach was rather focused on exploring the sculptural qualities of the industrial sites and document them from a retrospective point of view than to provide perspectives as a cultural heritage in the future. This idea was developed further by the students at the academy in Düsseldorf, for example, Thomas Struth, who created the series Unconscious Places in the 1970s and 80s and deals with at first sight commonplace urban settings in cities all over the world, documenting urban development while allowing the viewer to discover these underrated places. Indeed, the students' works assembled many stylistic features made popular by the Bechers and their students, such as monochrome backgrounds, front views, flatness, and one-point perspective. All students in Aachen chose color photography, a fact that was certainly influenced by the bold use of color in the pictured buildings. For example, this is a university building in Aachen. Interiors reflect the work of Candida Höfer, just as an example. And the colorful, detailed views remind of the work of Jörg Sasse.
Subsequently, the visual material produced by the students in Aachen provided a new point of view on the buildings and their architectural era. The individual photographic approach of the students was a result of an intensive work on the object, its history, and above all, its architectural qualities. In the end, each work provided a specific analysis of the advantages and disadvantages of the pictured architecture. But to make a difference in the perception of these buildings, this material had to be made accessible to a wider public. This leads to the aspect of dissemination of photography, which takes place in every communication concerning architecture, and in various media, such as photo books, architectural magazines, or social media. The interrelation and interdependence of photography and its publication has always played an important role, and as a reproducing mass media, photography functions as a substitution for the building itself and as an effective distributor. Therefore, the results of the Aachen case study were shown in an exhibition, which took place in a vacant office building from the early 1970s and was complemented by a catalog featuring architectural photographs and explanatory texts about the photographic series. The response from professionals as well as visitors of the exhibition was very positive. Every discussion with researchers or representatives of the city, such as the Administration for Building Matters, led to an intensive discourse on the displayed architecture, its history, and the urban context. Especially the highly controversial architecture of the bus station that you saw at the beginning attracted the professionals' attention. This effect was increased enormously when the local press picked up the issue and our project, so that it was made accessible to the city's residents as well. The approach to raise awareness for the anonymous modern of the 1970s and 80s in Aachen by using photography was thus achieved. The general perception of these buildings in the public space could be sharpened, and a deepened debate about their preservation was initiated in a local context, which was very interesting. Furthermore, the intense research led to the rediscovery of the once very highly regarded architect, Ewald Lienen, who was responsible for many building projects, mostly housing estates, in the 1970s and 80s in Aachen, but nowadays is almost forgotten. And one of his buildings is now in debate to be listed for monument protection. So with this, let us conclude. The effectiveness of making architecture visible through photography and influencing its appreciation and preservation dynamics depends on a crucial factor, the publication of the photograph and connecting it to a recognizable name and location, ideally accompanied by specific keywords related to the era. Successful on a small level, the Aachen case study introduced broader questions that take the discussion further than the local context it's originated in. When analyzing the reasons for the underestimation of these buildings, in Aachen and exploring methods to illuminate their significance. Not only the representation of photography, of course, but several other aspects need to be taken into consideration, like the absence of a defined architectural style or the lack of care for these buildings, aspects of labeling, the prevailing zeitgeist, the architect's image and reputation, and the photogenic appeal as well. If we consider that this case may be applicable to other cities as well, it becomes clear that expanding this research project on a larger scale, collaborating with various disciplines, and strengthening the theoretical framework is promising and essential to answer broader questions and to establish a heritage value in the characteristic cityscapes of the West German cities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Is there any yes, is there any immediate question? If anyone has a specific question, otherwise we will move to the second speaker and we will have a final discussion in the end. So I will invite the next speakers, Júlio Galasso, an architect and researcher based in Zurich. He graduated at Politecnico di Milano, UAV and TU Munich, and is currently a research assistant at ETH in Zurich. His field of research is 20th century Italian middle-class housing, and he has lectured at Accademia de Mendrisio, among other universities. Together with Natalia Voroshilova, he founded Continentale, an architecture practice based in Zurich. I will now present Natalia. So she's an architect and researcher, also based at Zurich. She studied at Politecnico di Milano and ETH in Zurich, where she graduated with her thesis on Milanese post-war housing and model for urban densification. She's currently teaching assistant at the Politecnico di Milano with Professor Paolo Carpi from Baucu. So thank you very much both for your presentation. You have the floor.
So good morning and thank you for the introduction. Today we will present the topic of our visual essay, which is the gardens of post-war middle-class housing. We studied these gardens because they are a quite peculiar case in the post-war reconstruction in Europe, and also because they are a rare example of commercial housing that, through the landscape, upgrade and take care of its surrounding environment. We found these gardens empirically, accidentally, let's say. We were living in this neighborhood, and while we were strolling there, we started to notice them and to take photographs because they are quite a beautiful photographic subject. And so as you see, these gardens basically are located in the middle of the street environment. The buildings are often doing a setback, like in this case, and in this setback there is a small oasis, let's say, we called it like this. These oases are characterized by recurring elements like the fountains, some small plants, natural pavement of irregular stones, and even though there are many cases like this that they follow a common scheme, this building always have the same approach towards their urban environment. So somehow they continue the street environment, but also like introduce this garden with doing a setback. So in the Milan, these gardens still nowadays plays a very important role because the city has not so much public green space, and the gardens give an important contribution in lowering the temperature of the city with their shade, and also really in making the environment more friendly, more livable. So after our first observation, then we started to map this phenomenon just using simple simple cartography, and we understood that there is actually a system made of these street front gardens, a system which was not designed intentionally by anybody, but that somehow happened to exist in the city. So in our presentation of today, we will give a portrait, a more detailed portrait of these gardens, and then we will investigate how they emerge through the work, to the intricate processes that involved a lot of different authors. So we start with the portrait. So as we have seen, these gardens are located in 19th century street. Milan is a 19th century city made of urban blocks. This goes back to the plan of Cesare Beruto that was approved in 1889 and was characterized by blocks of 50 to 150 meters long that were ideal for real estate development and that were thought for simple perimeter block. The city in the following decades expanded, reaching almost its nowadays extension, always continuing this block, this grid that was planned in the 19th century. The post-war housing entered into this block, basically occupying the lots that were emptied by the bombings of the World War. This housing keeps the structure of the 19th century street while providing apartments for the new population of the city. So this is also quite peculiar that in Milan there was a mass housing. The post-war mass housing was not built in a tabula rasa as it happened in the other European capitals. Instead, it was integrated in the 19th century urban fabric. And so we see, of course, another important feature of this mass housing, that they raise the density of the neighborhood where they are built. So they are a couple of stories higher than the neighborhood building, also more, and so they somehow were a compromise between densifying the city and preserving its atmosphere. The gardens are a buffer between they were conceived as a buffer between the private space of the apartment and the social space of the city. They work both as a filter when in the transition from the apartment to the city and as also a visual filter that the inhabitants can see through from their window. And the buildings of this housing react often to these natural elements. Post-war Milanese housing has been, in the last decades, studied for its facades that are very contextual and that somehow reacts a lot with the 19th century urban environment. At the same time, this facade, when they are next to the garden, they have very generous elements that allow the integration of the gardens in the apartments and in the daily life of the inhabitants. These gardens are, of course, private, so they are fenced, but the fence is always a transparent element. So somehow the gardens are taken care by the inhabitants of the building, so they are privately managed. But all the inhabitants of the city can enjoy them through these fences that are transparent and allow, let's say, a view on them. So this garden basically are part of the street environment. And the last point is that the gardens are always considered as a decorative element, as a representative element. They are not thought for being used. And actually, you will always find this kind of rules that tells that you cannot sit there and you cannot enter them, and so on. So now we will go to the second part.
So I would like to present the second part of our presentation. Now that we understand a bit the elements of the garden and how we can see them today, we would like to go a bit deeper into the processes that created and shaped the existence of these gardens to understand why they are so particular and peculiar. So let's move back to the post-war period when they were constructed. And I think on this archival photograph, we understand very well how this concept of the modern life with taller buildings and the presence of the greenery was squeezed into the 19th century urban fabric. And basically this was possible because after the World War II, the city's urban fabric was pierced and had a lot of holes spread homogeneously all around the city. Not only because of the gaps provided by the bombings, but also because of the expulsion of the industrial plants into the periphery and the demolition of the obsolete housing. So basically, all the city became one big construction site, trying to respond to the new aspirations of the new social class of the industrial bourgeoisie, having their own idea of the lifestyle, inserted, squeezed inside the 19th century urban structure. And all these operations happened by the means of the private real estate developers of the smaller and middle scale, because basically this is also very specific for Italian post-war context. It was a way to invest and to get the profit without a large starting capital. So basically, Milan was the industrial capital of Italy of that time, and all the capital gained through this activity was realized and invested into the redevelopment of the small lots within the city, aimed for the new middle-class families ready to buy the apartments. So we see that this commercial housing lies on the intersection of the strategies of very different actors, and somehow these street-front gardens that form the landscape of Milan today are on the intersection of all these trajectories, representing something for each of the different actors involved in this process. So for the middle-class families, unlike in other cities of that time in Europe, their ambition was to live inside the city, next to their place of work, next to all the services, in a modern apartment, but let's say in urbanized context, unlike the small private houses that was a dream maybe in other cities that somehow started the urban sprawl. Instead, in Milan, the urban housing was an important status symbol for the new middle class. And of course, that's why its representative quality was very important. So the building was oriented towards the street with its precious cladding and architectural elements all concentrated on the entrance. And somehow the garden became one of the decorative elements of this, let's say, architectural performance of the building. And this aspiration lay within the concept of the developers who were selling this image to the public of the living in the city and living with the garden through the many promotional materials. We can see how the trees are not covering fully the building, but just are like an ornament animating the facade. At the same time, we see the same building that is indeed in a very congested urban situation with this soul tree. And in parallel to this very commercial-oriented process, the urban planners were planning, of course, for the modern city with the freestanding buildings that somehow went against the aims of the developers and the reality of the importance of the developers' logic in the development of Milan. And so basically, the modernist concept didn't lead to the change of the rules, and the urban regulations stayed the same from the end of the 19th century. That basically obliged the buildings to stick to the party walls of the neighbors, and the only way they could bring this modernist green was doing the setback in the middle of the plot, allowing this presence of the greenery. So somehow this is also the the compromise between the old logics of the regulations, their kind of conservative character, and the modernist ambition of living in the green. And so the architects, they had to mediate between all these different aspirations, creating the new building types that would respond to all the needs of the different actors, inventing new models that were then replicated all around the city, with the most famous examples being published in the periodicals, and then the ordinary architects repeating these new schemes. And through this process, this was the process with which ordinary landscape of Milan, how we see it today, was realized. And this was the base for our, let's say, interest and also for our photographical research, because apparently this is not, this kind of reality is not largely discussed in the architectural research scene in Milan today. And we wanted to, with our photographical essay, to, let's say, to fix the presence of these elements in the city, but then also we see that the society, of course, changed and the lifestyle changed. And these landscapes that were taken care of somehow, that were meaningful for the past society of the middle class, we would like to pose the question, what can be the new meaning today? And is it still the landscape of care? Or, as we see already in some cases in Milan, these landscapes are disregarded because they don't provide a new meaning, with the old one being not relevant for the today anymore. So we would like to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
We can open the discussion, yes, for those two. If you have any questions or comments about these presentations. I may start with a curiosity about this last presentation. Which
you want to have that at the end? Sorry.
We can have the break now.
Okay, the discussion. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we discuss then, because otherwise each roundtable will have several discussions.
Okay. Okay. So thanks, Pedro. So we're going to take a break now, I think, and come back.
We start discussing on the break.
Yeah. We take a little. Yeah. Okay. In case discussion breaks out too soon, we're going to have a break and have a discussion out there, and then come back. So we come back in half an hour, is it? Yeah.
20 minutes?
Okay.